runs.
Trucks, new Chevrolet trucks, new Chevrolet Task Force trucks. The great new champ is on the road. Whatever the job, whatever the load, you get the power you need to haul with Chevrolet, the champion of them all.
Hello everybody, Jack the Railfan here. Today we're going to be working on the 57 Chevy some more, and I'll get you caught up on everything that's been going around it since we got it running. Let's get right into it. As I'm sure you've noticed by now, I've painted the bumper white. All these trucks originally left the factory with either white or chrome bumpers. The white was way more common though, because chrome was an extra cost option not a lot of people got, especially on these bigger trucks. When this truck was painted red, they got rid of most of the original white paint on the bumper in order to paint it red. So there wasn't anything for me to sand it back down to. So I got out some Rust-Oleum white and painted it. And after 2 coats of that, I put a 1957 Michigan license plate on it. I have another matching one to put on the back as soon as we get a license plate bracket and hitch piece attached, and I think that looks really good, especially because the license plate is in really nice condition. I also took a oil-based black paint pen and painted the Chevrolet letters on the grille black, so now you can tell from quite a long ways away that it says Chevrolet instead of having to get real up close to really tell that there's anything there. Under the hood, I've put the air cleaner back on. This used to be an oil bath filter, but now it has to have paper elements in it because in order to make it fit on this carburetor, whoever did the job had to gut the internals. It got 2 coats of black paint because in any one spot it was either a really ugly shade of green that was real worn out or rusty. So now it looks a lot better. And on the more practical side of things, I wired in the alternator and the voltage regulator. So now, if I unplug the battery for a second, I haven't tried it yet because we need to get some more gas for it, but it should try to keep running for a second afterwards. Something interesting to know about this truck is that the engine isn't original. All 1957 Chevy low cab forwards were built with 283 small block V8s. This is because the truck was not long enough to hold a 6-cylinder engine with a transmission. It's just the way they were designed. But 1957 was the first year for the 283. In 1955 and 56, they had the 265, which is the predecessor to the 283, and was identical in almost every way. The biggest difference, besides the cylinder bore being slightly smaller, is that they didn't have oil filters. So since this truck's original engine got worn out and had to be swapped, it hasn't had an oil filter. Well, earlier today, my dad went out somewhere and picked this up for me. This is an original GM oil filter that is off of a 6-cylinder engine. The reason we know it came off of a 6-cylinder is because it has some of the original green paint on it still. Not a lot. It's probably going to have to get repainted at some point. But for now, we're just going to try and see if we can get it to fit on this engine. Another performance-enhancing modification we can do right this second. There. That should be good for about 100 horsepower, at least. Alright, so about what we're going to be working on today. You might have noticed, across all my videos about this truck, the hood is not shut all the way, and that is because of these finicky buggers. These hood latches right here are both stuck. And that seems to be a pretty common thing across these trucks from what I've seen. Maybe it was just a kind of vulnerable design for that. So what we're going to have to do is get those hood latches out and work on them on the workbench. But before we can do that, we've got to clean up this workbench. Alright, I made myself a nice big workspace, and over the last 2 days these have been soaking in oil. So over about the last hour or so I've been scraping out all the extra dirt and grease and getting rid of some rust. And now that moves less, and the reason is because this has a spring holding the latch in the right spot. I also got a brand used oil bath air filter off of a 283 small block. This matches what the truck used to have on it when it was brand new, and it's off of a 1961 Chevy pickup that my dad used to drive that had a 283 in it. This is the factory driver's side mirror mount. If we go to the other side, you might notice that it doesn't have a passenger side mirror mount. And that is because Hess had a wonderful idea when they were getting this truck ready to work for them. Instead of paying full price for the full-sized side view mirrors, they just went the cheap route and got the absolute minimal amount of mirror they possibly could. Then they grabbed these mirrors and slapped them on this truck. The way we know is that instead of having this brace right here, factory mirrors would have had it going down across like that. And we know that because that's how this truck is. This is another 1957 Chevy 5400 low cab forward, an exact match, except for the fact that this one is covered by a tarp right now. So here's some pictures and videos of getting it over here. This truck has big West Coast senior style side view mirrors, just like that truck, only this one is original, so this cross piece goes down in the proper way. Now this mirror is bent and missing its actual glass, and the other one is a replacement, but it gives us a good look at the way that one would have been if it was ordered that way from the factory. This truck was a fuel truck for Leonard Oil, and it still has some of its markings. When we dragged it up here, we found out a couple of things. It doesn't have rear shocks, so it's missing the cross member that would have held them. Doesn't really add any extra strength to the frame, and that's why on that truck, that one is so much smaller. This cross member was cut up to fit a dump bed at one point, and we also discovered that the U-bolts were so bad they were actually falling apart and needed to be replaced. So we got some new ones, put that on there. This is my dad's truck. We figure it probably needs all the exact same stuff as mine to run, except it's been sitting for 50 years. This truck has not ran since 1972. So it might be a bit more of a challenge to get it running. A few days ago, I drove the truck for the first time, and I made sure to get some footage of it. Let's take a look at that. Today is the day I'm going to drive the truck for the first time, but before we put some more gas in it and fire it up, we are changing the oil because from circulating everything, from driving it around for the first time in 30 years, it got all the surface rust that was just sitting in the engine down into the oil pan. Flushed the internals the first time, so it had to be changed. We put new 30 weight diesel oil in it. We swapped out the dipstick for one out of a 283 that we have in storage because the old one was incorrect. This one's still giving a false reading, just like the old one, but at least this one fits in the hole. And we tried to put the breather cap off of that 283 on here, but the 265s, we discovered, have a thread to screw the breather cap on instead of a spring where you just push the breather cap on and then it holds it with the spring. So now we're going to zip tie the electrical pieces that I put in a way that they won't try to touch the body or anything and cause a short. We put a gallon of gas in it out of the same jug that we filled the oil with, so that way it lubricates the piston rings as it runs. Once again, the float is stuck. Probably flooded from that. muscle car. Good. It's real good.
Okay.
So clutch all the way down.
Yeah, maybe that's reverse.
Yep, that's reverse.
Well, this is first.
Yep.
That happened the other day.
Yeah. I saw.
She's a little cold. You got a wheel dragging, which is why you got to give it a little throttle while you're
Turning.
Yeah, it's something still dragging, and then the rust will wear off.
I see.
All right, first is up here.
Yep.
Second straight back. So if you want to shift it, just go like this. It's got to warm up a little.
Yeah.
Here, once.
The throttle linkage is loose, and this piece tries to swivel around inside the cab. So my dad has some vice grips. He's gonna adjust them to the right size and tighten it up.
Oh, that's way better. But the RPM's kind of low, see?
Yep.
So,
That's what I'm saying. Better for speed.
well, a little too low, but.
The horn works.
We'll switch drivers up here. I'll turn it around.
Okay.
That's second.
So right now, I'm driving my truck for the first time, and it feels great. This is the first time I've driven a truck since we scrapped the Dodge. Watching out for some hay bales next to the truck here, being real careful. Last thing I want to do, driving my truck for the first time, is nudge a bale out of its space. I have a working horn, as I displayed when I passed that 4 is so great. It's so fun to drive around, and it has attracted the neighbors. Came over to see it run. One guy drove by in his early 60s Chevy pickup. Just drove by the farm real slow and saw it cruise around the yard. This thing is so much fun just to work on, to drive, everything. If you have the means to get any old vehicle, do it. If you think you can undertake the task of getting the engine to run and just caring for an old vehicle, that's the thing to do. This is a lot of fun. Way better than any modern car. And then you can take it just the same places. You can take it to go to Railfan at any crossings. There are crossings nearby. If I can get this roadworthy within a little while, I might be making videos where I park this next to the tracks and watch CSX trains go by. So we'll see about that.
The boys been out test driving their Chevy project. Dad gave Jack a little driving lesson. George's head is bobbing all over the place.
I'm in my own truck. Vroom, vroom. We're just kind of cruising. Yeah, this is in low gear, I'm sure, for in the differential. I'm certain, because when you're going out on the road, second gear, you know, you want it to be faster than this. Ideally.
Yeah, probably you want to be faster than that.
This is the off the main road speed. So I'd like to get, if we're going to take it out on the road to all things ever, we got to make sure that rear differential shifts.
Maybe.
You got those lights working. He's showing ya. Jack went through the whole thing and replaced a bunch of wiring because it was all mouse chewed up, as these old trucks are, as they said.
I've been taking my siblings out for rides for about the last hour or so. Now my dad is gonna park it for me. There's the Leonard truck. Another 1957
1 month
5400. And it's only 1 month newer than this one. 1 month apart from when they left the factory. Those are the hay bales I was watching out for earlier. Its job, at least its first job as a farm truck, is going to be to bring more of those back from the field. Okay. Go ahead and shut the spark off with them. Okay. You see, after I wired up the alternator, the only way to shut it off, because of where I hooked the wire in, is to stall it by putting in a gear that's too high to start in. It is not on fire. It's leaking a little oil out of the rear end right there. Sat so long. Back to present day, a couple days after that, I have painted this part of the inside of the frame and the muffler because there was junk on it up here, and while I was scrubbing that, I took a little bit of the steel wool to that too. And while driving the truck, this system I put in, which is the rechargeable whirler system, alternator, voltage regulator, and this wire going wherever. This first section of the green wire right here before the wire nut coming off of the voltage regulator is all there was, and I had it hooked in to the top of the ballast resistor, meaning when I hit the switch to shut the engine off, it was running independent of any of this side of the system. It was all the recharging system and then the tail end of the ignition circuit. So it was running completely without the help of the battery. With the switch undone, it wasn't even connected to the battery at that point. So what I did was I disconnected it from there, added a strip, and made sure it goes to the same spot the wire to that switch is. Also, to make sure nothing touched while I was driving and shorted the system out and possibly damaged some components, my dad zip tied the wiring over here, so it was much safer. You might notice I took the air cleaner back off, and now there is a rag and assorted tools on top of the carburetor. And that is because the float keeps sticking. I took the top off of the carburetor, that's why there was a rag there. It's to cover the bottom half of it. And I'm going to do some research and close inspection of the parts. Here's the float. I know it's not sinking because when we tapped on the carburetor before, it fixed the problem. Temporarily, that is. It only happens when you're starting the engine and it's cold. Here's the pin that goes in there. There's the valve piece, kind of an arrow-shaped bit. And then that's just the throttle linkage piece. So I'll get all this sorted out and then it should run pretty good. Alright, it's the next day. I have the float section of everything cleaned up. Everything regarding the float is good. So now I'll just kind of get that aligned properly and secure the top off camera, and then we'll test it out. Alright, let's see what happens. Run switch is set to on. Oh, I see. There was still gas left in the cylinders, so it took off and then immediately shut off. So it's still got to pump gas because most of the gas evaporated out of the bowl, so it kind of has to reprime. But there was still some in there, so we're pretty good right now. It's a couple weeks after the carburetor fire now. Everything's fine. I cleaned up the foam from the fire extinguisher. The only evidence now is a little bit of shriveling on the insulation of this wire, so nothing really bad happened. But I think I know what caused it. For one thing, I forgot to link up some of the throttle linkage right here. That might have did something. But more importantly, it backfired, probably because it was a little bit flooded, and it was letting a bit of gas out of the vent on top of the carburetor. So it backfiring lit that gas on fire, and that's what did it. But since then, it hasn't done it. I've started the engine a total of 5 times now since then, driven it around, and it's been totally fine. So whatever gremlins were in there right then, I think it's worked them out. But I'll still keep an eye on it, just in case. Just the other day, I drove the truck for a second time to practice my shifting and to take pictures of it with some of the other old trucks around the farm. So let's take a look at that.
Jack's out cruising in his 57 Chevy. It's his old Hess truck, his project. Just giving it a little exercise. Jack's out running his 57 today.
So now I've gotten a bit more used to how high you have to rev it up to shift, and now I know if you're shifting from second to third, you gotta be quick about it, or else you'll stop and stall it before you can get it in gear properly. Besides some minor timing adjustment and getting all the lights working again, this is pretty much in good working order now, and I'm happy to have it this way. So that'll just about do it for this video. If you liked it, leave a like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you know whenever a new video of mine comes out. I'll see you in the next one. Bye!
Statistics say at the AAA it's a 72-hour drive, but we roared down into Fairbanks town in less than 45.